We are here at Capclave with the guests of honor, Anne and Jeff VanderMeer, and Jeff is here with me now. Jeff, welcome to Fast Forward.
Thanks. Glad
I
to be
want,
here.
I want to start talking to you about your fiction. It's a very strange, weird kind of writing, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Finch, for example, the ambergris
Yeah.
stories, is one of the strangest worlds I've ever read. What was the seed for this strange city with the mushrooms?
Well, the weirdest thing is it's all based on real life. I mean, Finch is basically a story about a detective who's in a compromised situation working for these occupiers. And he could be any person in any kind of occupied city in the world. Like I was thinking Paris during the Nazis. I was thinking certain shades of Baghdad and whatnot, without being too overt. And then the fact that there are these fungal technologies by the people, the creatures that have taken over, really it's just extrapolated from the way that fungus and spores and whatnot work in the real world. Except here you have actual guns that are made out of fungus, and kind of one of the jokes is the occupiers don't really understand human beings, which is sometimes what happens when people occupy a place and they don't understand the natives. And so they provide the policemen with these guns that they should feel comfortable and secure with, but actually kind of are too organic and kind of make weird sounds and aren't always reliable. And you know, they have these memory hole things in their office that shoot up messages from these things that are more like lamprey mouths. And you know, I mean, I definitely owes a debt to William Burroughs in some ways.
Yeah.
But the focal point of it really is Finch, this guy who's continually in a tighter and tighter circle trying to solve this double murder, and everybody from the rebels to the occupiers are going to kill him one way or the other, depending on how it goes. So,
one
so
of the things I liked about it was
yeah.
the way it was a noir. It was a crime noir, detective novel,
I mean,
almost from the 30s or 40s, with this fungal technology.
Well, see, that's the thing. If you're going to do something surreal, I always believe it's really cruel to the reader if you don't give them something to anchor it or to tie into. And so, for me, loving noir fiction, having read it since I was in my teens, it was great to be able to do an homage to that also provided the backbone for the book and the plot and kind of carries you along. I mean, the book builds momentum as it goes along, so hopefully readers are reading at a kind of a thriller pace at a certain point, once the setup is gone. But that, I think, is what provides the familiar element that readers hang on to.
And it's a squishy city.
It is a squishy city. It's a very tactile experience. I mean, what I love about certain secondary world fantasies is how they're able to actually kind of flesh out this world. But the best ones also still have that kind of mirror effect with the real world. I mean, one of the more risky things I did is have the occupiers actually building 2 towers out in the bay, which is kind of, since it's kind of an alternate universe situation, kind of analogous in a way to certain real world events in opposite, but with, so that's what I try to do, is find those kind of points of familiarity and then attach to them the strange stuff that really I find fascinating, because again, it comes out of real life.
Yeah, and your short fiction has similar qualities. Reading your short fiction, they're very dreamlike.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is when I started writing, I didn't think I was writing weird fiction. I just had this point of view about the world, and then more and more as I shared my work with others and then sent it out to magazines, it became clear that I was not writing mainstream literary fiction. And in fact, even for genre, some of the stuff is too Kafkaesque or whatever to be considered center genre. And so really my career has been fashioned out of finding those mainstream publications and whatnot that like this kind of material, and then also the genre magazines that publish it. And you can make a good career out of that, really, finding that interstice.
And you have.
So, yeah.
Because there's a lot of the short stuff, and there seems to be threads going through them. Before we went on air, we were talking about a character in some of the stories. I have the collection Third Bear out here, and in the story Third Bear, there's the monster Mord, and then later on I'm reading another story, and there's a person Mord who is changing in this business world where people change and become other.
Yeah, it's kind of a biotech company that already deals in mutations, but one of the employees in HR, who's a friend of the main character, is changing into this bear. And really what I'm doing is I'm doing this series of stories set in these different alternate universes. And at one point, this character, who starts out human, becomes a bear, basically finds a door into another universe, and it drives them even crazier. And there are all these spin-offs because of the way that he travels through these places, so there become multiple versions of him, and it's kind of nuts, but if I can pull it off, it's going to be kind of interesting.
It's cool. And there's something about your fiction, in particular your short fiction, that just gets down into like some very strange places in your head, which is cool.
Well, thanks.
Let's talk a little bit about some of your other things, your editing work that you do with your wife, like the Steampunk anthology you've done, the New Weird. I mean, the New Weird, I can see where you'd be drawn to that because it's kind of what you write.
Right. Well, I mean, back in the early part of this last decade, there was a kind of a movement or a discussion about what is this stuff that's coming out between China Mieville, M. John Harrison, myself to some extent, Steph Swanston, K.J. Bishop, and a bunch of other writers. And really what it comes down to is I think it takes the lessons from the new wave, from the British New Wave of the 1960s and early 70s, combines that kind of sensibility with kind of the attention to body horror and grotesquerie in Clive Barker's Books of Blood, and then weds that to what you think of as traditional weird. So it's kind of like an updated weird in that way. And it's different from slipstream or interstitial fiction because those tend to shy away a little bit from the horror aspect. And so that's how I would differentiate it. And a lot of it is set in secondary world settings, but it combines all these things and these pulp and literary influences together. Today it's used as a marketing term sometimes, but it's also used by readers, by critics. It's become kind of a shorthand, sometimes for just things people can't identify. Sometimes for stuff that I think legitimately could be defined as new weird. But overall, it's been useful because it's allowed this stuff that might otherwise be harder to publish to find more of a niche.
Mm-hmm. And then you're also involved in steampunk, which is really different from New Weird is kind of body morphing, and it is, like I said, squishy in a lot of ways. And steampunk is brass and canvas and baling wire. Yes.
Well, I think it's funny actually because we think of steampunk as New Weird's kinder, gentler cousin, and that was kind of brought home by the fact some people are now calling China Mieville's Perdido Street Station steampunk, which I don't understand at all. But I think it's because steampunk is now branching out into what I'd call tinker stories, like stories about people making things. That's part of those are the characters that are coming through, and then also the fact that there's all this influence coming in now from outside of the UK and the US, and defining steampunk as something other than just about Victorian England, for example, that's making it fresh and interesting. But it's interesting to me, not just because of the fiction, but because of the whole culture associated with the maker movement, the environmental concerns and whatnot.
Yeah, that's one of the things I find really fascinating about steampunk is the way it's branched out from being kind of a literary niche into a whole social.
Right, and that's where the fiction is coming back from. Someone like Gail Carriger came out of being in the steampunk subculture, right? So she may not even have been aware of like K.W. Jader and Blaylock when she was writing her books. She probably was aware of Verne. And so it's this weird thing where the original stuff called steampunk probably isn't that much of an influence on a lot of the stuff coming up now. It is definitely a fad, a trend. And the fiction part may run its course. But the fact that there are people actually out there making things, doing art, that's the part of it that makes me think it might last a little longer.
Yep. Well, I hope so, because I like this stuff. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on Fast Forward.
Thanks for having me.
And for your wife as well, Anne. Thank you very much. So for all of us here at Fast Forward and at Capclave, this is Mike Zipser saying, take care.